45 of the last 47 presidents, which is all we've had, have ordered kinetic acts, just like President Trump has done, without going to Congress. This isn't new. This has happened 45 in the last 47 presidencies. The Constitution, Article 2, clearly gives the president not only the right, but indeed the duty, as does his oath, to protect the United States.
Why is Donald Trump hell-bent on making history repeat itself? Why is he plunging America headfirst into a war that Americans do not want and which he cannot even explain? Enough is enough. The American people deserve a say, and that is what our resolution is about. We must act to stop Trump's belligerence. The American people will be watching how senators vote. History will judge this chamber for how we act. To my colleagues, all of my colleagues, it is time to make a stand. We must stop another war in the Middle East.
I'll vote no on the pending resolution. President Trump decided to attack Iran. That decision was profound, deliberate, and correct. The president understands the weight of war. He was clear-eyed about the risk, and he was honest with the American people. From very early on Saturday morning, he said, we pray for every service member as they selflessly risk their lives to ensure that Americans and our children will never be threatened by a nuclear-armed Iran.
The declaration of war is not a power that the President of the United States has. The Constitution makes it clear the declaration of war is the authority and the responsibility of Congress. Presidents of both parties, yes, they have engaged in military operations, but the declaration of war belongs to this body. Well, to me, this looks like a war.
For more on this, let's now extend a very warm welcome to SABC News' U.S. correspondent, Sherwin Bryce-Pease. So, Sherwin, a very good afternoon to you. Like most things of a political nature, never shall the two sides see eye to eye on almost everything, including, of course, which branch of government has the power to declare war in the United States, as we've just seen on that clip. Put this congressional debate into some context for us. A very good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Alicia. And I think the numbers, right, how those votes played out shows you a very divided Congress, which is emblematic of a very divided country on this issue and on most issues. And essentially the fight here is who has, which legislative or executive has the power to declare war. And so Article 1 of the United States Constitution talks about the legislative branch, the United States Congress. And it says the Congress shall have the power to declare war. Article 2, which deals with the executive branch, says the president shall be the commander-in-chief of the Army and the Navy of the United States and of militia of several states when called into actual service of the United States. And therein lies the friction. And so essentially, this is an old age debate that is ongoing today, given the escalation you are seeing in the Middle East, about who has the role to declare war here. And you're even hearing from certain Republican members of Congress that perhaps this isn't necessarily a war, but a kinetic action being led here by the United States that could come to an end very, very quickly. We are a week into this war. And so in terms of changing the calculus on the ground, what would have been required in terms of these war powers resolutions is that they passed by a 2/3 majority. Unfortunately, you had majorities by a very slim margin. It didn't reach the 2/3 threshold, and therefore could have been vetoed by the United States president, who is seeking to continue this military campaign. There was also, of course, you heard some of the senators in the U.S. Senate debating there. These were some of the views in the House of Representatives. Let's watch.
We believe that Donald Trump needed to get authorization for engaging in a war. He admits it's a war.
But if we didn't do what we're doing right now, you would have had a nuclear war and they would have taken out many countries because you know what? They're sick people. They're mentally ill, sick people.
Is there any comment that you want to make at this stage? And very quickly, also speak to the fact that the United Nations has been warning all week about the humanitarian fallout and the particular risk to civilians in this war. And what more can you tell us on that?
Yeah, Tom Fletcher, the UN's Emergency Relief Coordinator and the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs, is actually due to brief media later today here in New York at the United Nations. But essentially, the United Nations, Alicia, has been very, very concerned about the humanitarian fallout we are seeing in the region, not only in Iran, not only in Israel, but also in those Gulf nations. You are seeing an escalation now that Hezbollah has injected itself in this conflict in defense of the assassination of the Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. You are seeing Beirut, in the south of Lebanon, becoming a war zone. Over 100,000 Lebanese are sheltering in bomb shelters, over 400 bomb shelters. And this is some of the concern that the UN has been raising. It talks about how the airspace has been closed and how that is disrupting humanitarian operations in the region. Recall that this is not the only humanitarian situation that the United States is dealing with in that region. Think about what is going on in Gaza today. Think about what is going on in the occupied Palestinian West Bank. Think about the transition that is ongoing in parts of Syria. And there are many other, Libya, for example, right, just in that region. And so in terms of the humanitarian strain that this organization and other humanitarian organizations have already been under before this escalation in the Middle East, you then begin to understand just how stretched resources are in a moment like this. They warn, Alicia, that if routes and maritime corridors, energy routes and maritime corridors, such as the Strait of Hormuz, stay closed for an indefinite period of time, food prices will soar, health systems will be squeezed, and supplies will tighten in countries that rely on imports. Who relies on those imports? Many countries in South Asia, many countries in Asia. China, in the main, is a big consumer of oil that passes through that region. You have the liquefied natural gas from places like Qatar that move through there. And so you're seeing the spike in the oil prices. That affects everybody everywhere in the world. And so the message to South Africans and people watching in that region is that your petrol prices are likely to go up extremely quickly, given the implosion that you're seeing in terms of what is playing itself out on the ground in the Middle East right now.
We're unfortunately out of time there, Sherwin. Trump now introducing MEGA, Make Iran Great Again. That's where we're going to leave it with Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News US correspondent, with the very latest developments in the Iran-Israel war.